Christian mom, let me teach you how to raise your kids.
No, but that's your role as a parent.
Family vlog abuse has started to happen. The Ruby Franke, the family of 5 incident, Jordan's Cheyenne incident, Shay Carl and the Shay Tards.
Very difficult subject. Especially conservatively speaking.
Your child should never be punished with hunger or
domestic violence in the US is like, and the numbers are fucking horrifying. The atmosphere of modern-day society created an illusion of moral, philosophical and social lines in between what's right and what's wrong. We examined this theoretical mirage in latest topics and controversies. My name is Aleks.
I'm Erin.
Let's begin.
Okay, so topic today is the YouTube scandal that is, currently literally everywhere. Ruby Franke and her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, who have been charged with child abuse. And it is a truly heartbreaking, devastating story. And unfortunately, something that happens all too often and is too common.
That's true.
So for those of you that don't know, which if you haven't heard about this story, you must be living under a rock. There's a YouTube channel that was run by Ruby Franke, her business partner Jody Hildebrandt, called 8 Passengers, which was a family YouTube channel where she herself gave parenting advice to women and just people in general about her parenting styles. And she has had quite a lot of controversies because of her particular parenting styles for the last few years, where she punishes her children by letting them starve. She took away one of her son's bedrooms and made him sleep on a beanbag for 8 months. Just her 6-year-old daughter went to school without her lunch, and she expected her 6-year-old to pack her own lunch every single day for school. And she didn't have a lunch, and so her teacher called her and was like, hey, can you bring her a lunch? And she said, no. I know you're uncomfortable with her being hungry, but she should be hungry because she didn't pack. She's 6 years old. Along with other things. So her son escaped recently, where he was tied up with rope. He had open lacerations on his limbs. He was malnourished. He escaped and climbed out of a window and went to a neighbor's house asking for food and water, who then called the police, obviously. And now both Ruby and Jody are charged with child negligence and abuse and, I think 6 counts of child abuse.
And she has 6 children, so it's really like that's what also is heartbreaking, that there's not just like 1 child or 2 children living there. There's 6 children that witnessing this as well. Like it's also a significant number as well.
Well, after her son escaped and the neighbor called the police, they went over to inspect the house and found the 10-year-old daughter, who was also malnourished and very obviously being abused. Found her in the home still. So, and one thing, the authorities knew she knew about all of this and was involved because she uploaded a video from the house for that week, showing that she was there and she was very, very much aware of what was happening to her kids because she was doing it to her kids.
Before we go on, I think I kind of thought about the whole situation, and it was like, oh, maybe I do a little bit of research on just in general what this domestic violence in the US is like, and the numbers are fucking horrifying. 10 million men and women each year report a form of intimate partner violence. 10 million report. It's like, how many more are unreported?
Well, most kids don't report.
That's also true.
Most kids don't.
1 in 15 children are reportedly directly exposed to a intimate partner violence, so the household violence. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe violence or sexual violence or stalking with an impact, which means stalking that leads to some kind of physical interaction. 1 in 4 women, so like 25% in their lifetime. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men are injured from a domestic violence act. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men, so 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men experience a form of extreme sexual violence, which we will not say due to the moderation on YouTube. But what horrified me is 1 in 5, that's 20% in a lifetime. Like, this is crazy.
That's reported.
That's reported
like,
as well.
You need
yes.
To
you need to sign it. Yeah. Yes. And but also 1 in 71 men. Like, it's also a lot of men.
No, it's
when you think about it. That's because we usually, when we think about the extreme of sexual violence, you usually think men to women, right? And now 1 in 71, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so 1 in 15 children. It is an ncadv.org, which is the kind of the statistics, the statistic companion for that. But other sources do rate around 10 million children each year being exposed to some kind of form of domestic violence. It's real. Like, it's a real issue, and it is only U.S. Like, this is only U.S. Just imagine third world countries where that's not that much of accountability.
Not
there.
even.
But like.
No, domestic violence is rampant in New Zealand.
In New Zealand, that's true.
In UK.
Yeah, that's true.
Australia. So it doesn't have to be third world. It's think about South America as well.
That's
like, it's everywhere.
Yeah, no, and so it's really much of a kind of a wake up call that we are kind of having this issue with Ruby and Jody, and they're getting in trouble, but it's really not like one person individually having this act. No, it's a real widespread issue that we all should.
But what just
really
gets me is she was like, she marketed her channel as a parenting advice, family advice. People watched her to gain parental advice. And it's something that is only going to plague our world today, because back in the day, if you were struggling with parenting or issues that you had as a parent, you would straight away turn to abuse, because it was very biblical, like spare the rod, spare the child, whatever, and the rule of thumb. But now, and you would maybe go to your neighbors if you had a question about your kids. You would look to your community to support. And now we live in a world where social media is everywhere. So people are turning online for answers, and people are marketing and making money off of that.
Yeah.
And she was one of those people making tons of money by giving other people advice on how to raise kids properly.
Properly, yeah. And having that, and it
being
is,
abusive.
It is definitely. And I was kind of questioning it, and I really tried to dig in and see if there is a breakdown by state, which I couldn't kind of find the specific numbers, because there's like, the state of California releasing one, the state of Utah was releasing another number, and they're not like linked to each other, and the population, the differences are very large, so it's very hard to understand what does that mean in the larger scheme of things. Is that the issue in a particular overpopulated states, or is it an issue in particular conservative states, or is it an issue?
I would say it would be, I think there is a direct correlation between religion and abuse.
Well, you think about that they living in Utah and they're Mormon, so would that?
Well,
would
she was very like, Christian mom, let me teach you how to raise your kids. And I would say in general, I think that religion is linked to abuse.
I mean, when your religion says that, then yeah, for sure. But it's not only Christianity. There we're gonna be talking about a lot of other religions, which is also having that exactly the same, where you as a parent is very possessive of the person in front of you, and that's an interesting thought that I have. I was thinking about it because, especially in nowadays world, you're raising your child from a very young age, which they're exposed to a lot of different opinions around, and you really cannot stop them from being exposed to that. It's how you mitigate that you're an imperfect person and explaining to your 6 years old practically that you're an imperfect person and you will do mistakes. However, you really try the best for them without, without kind of just restricting them in a bubble, kind of putting them in a bubble, because in the end of the day, you're just gonna come out with resentment from your child being like, my mother or my father doesn't allow me to do blah 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 blah, without a really strong understanding to why that happens and why is it beneficial. Like it's quite difficult when you think about it, and that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is when you look at bringing up children nowadays, especially in the very very near future, how do you see yourself to position yourself for, say, let's say like 6 to 8 years old, when your influence drops down dramatically because now they're in school, now they actually have majority of their social influences is from outside of your support. Like, how do you see yourself being in it and be like, what do you do?
You mean disciplining children?
Well, outside of disciplining, but also how do you position yourself towards the child? Do you say that you're a guard and your word is a law, or how do you position yourself towards their life?
I mean, I'm no one to give parenting advice. I can just speak from my own personal experiences. And I, for sure, don't think when kids are kids, they need stability and routine. Those are directly linked to happiness. Those are directly linked to them performing well and doing well. They need a strong sense of encouragement, and they need to get confidence from somewhere. So you need to be a parent that builds them up.
Sure.
You need to slowly teach them how to be a little bit more independent, because they're going to go out into the real world one day. So you slowly have to teach them that. I don't think that a parent's word is law. There needs to be, so in my head, if they can argue logically for, say they want to go out to a friend's house or something, and you go, no, you can't, you haven't done your homework. If they can create a logical argument for why they think they should go, I would consider that and be like, well, okay then. Yeah, you can go. Parents shouldn't be their friend when they're kids. They need an adult figure. So you're there to be a parent. You can be friends with them once they're grown. And that's what that's for. But if they can, I would instill kind of a debate, logical ethic within the family. So if they can logically debate why I'm wrong for saying something, then I would concede and I would allow them to do whatever I told them they couldn't do.
But also teaching them critical thinking and be like, okay, why do I think that I want to go to my friends today and not stay home and study? How is it beneficial to like and actually thinking it through? I think I think it is a very very real advice, and I was kind of contemplating that as well, and thinking that it is a really difficult balance in between making sure that your children know the kind of house rules, but at the same time is giving them enough freedom to actually choose for themselves to what they actually want to do and how they want to explore.
So another rule for me, and again, I'm nobody to give advice, but they have to do something. You can't just go to school and that's it. You need to have a hobby, you need to have an activity, you need to have something. It doesn't have to be a hobby or an activity I choose for you. I might say, hey, go play soccer, and they're like, I don't like soccer, I want to dance. Okay, great. Whatever it is you want to do that makes you happy, go do that. But you have to stick to something, because I think discipline is really important to instill, and sticking with something and developing and honing a skill and a talent is far too important to let them be lazy on. So they can do whatever they want to do, whatever makes them happy, but they have to stick to it. That would be my other little bit, but I'm no one to give advice. And it is a difficult line, and people are looking at this YouTube star, and people are looking to social media for people with all of the answers to, how do I do this as a parent? How do I do this as a parent? I'm lost. And you have all of these situations where parents are very overwhelmed. We are in a recession, you might having to work 2 jobs, and you're coming home, your kids aren't listening to you, you know, and you are desperately looking for answers, and this is someone who has cashed in on that market of people desperately looking for answers and not necessarily providing good advice. And I just want to make this clear while we're on Ruby Franke and talking about it. Her oldest daughter, who is 20 years old, Cherie, has come out and publicly asked that everybody that followed them unfollow. They don't want her to have access to any more publicity. They don't want to have her to have any more access to any money or monetary value. So if you are subscribed to 8 Passengers, unsubscribe, unfollow her mom from all social media platforms that you can. That at her request. So
And then she also came out to say that if anybody has any other like recordings or any other, you know, any other physical evidence of some kind of abuse that's been happening, send it to her as well. So that's an extra thing.
What is so devastating about this is that the neighbors tried so hard. They tried so hard to get the police and CPS involved, and they were basically just ignored for years. It's been a couple years. They've put complaints to police. They've asked for wellness checks. They've seen all of this like horrendous abuse and reported it to authorities, and it was just ignored. So if nothing else, you know, if I know it's sad to say, but potentially if they didn't have this YouTube platform, you know, maybe nothing would have happened again. So I'm grateful that publicly it's out there. So at least now the police are doing something, and CPS is taking the children away and potentially are safe.
It is a big problem within the social workers to actually not only they initiate the change within, but also monitor it. Because just imagine the amount of, again, referring to the figures, 10 million people are subject to that. This is 1/35 of the population. So per one worker, there's gonna be so many people that you have to not only like instigate the change within the family, but also making sure that week, 2 weeks, it's actually followed up, and it's like, you know, it's actually progressing into the somewhat of a right direction in that sense. While we are on the topic of the children and kind of how do you feel about raising up children, I did wanted to bring up that the highest success rate for a child's lifetime in terms of the physical success, mental success, but also the success within the society and societal structure is studying, is actually being at school and actually visiting school and performing as much as you can, because the education is basically the biggest social ladder you can subject your child to. Now, if your child is 6 years old and you try to discipline them by teaching them how to cook dinner or lunch or breakfast, that's okay. If it start objectively, if it start intervening with their study because they're hungry and they can't really concentrate, that's the line you're crossing already.
Your child should never be punished with hunger or something that should be a basic human right. Absolutely. They should have a right to sleep comfortably. They should have a right to be well fed, clean, dry. You should never ever punish them by saying you can't shower, you can't eat, you can't have a bed, you can't. No. That's not punishment. That's just abuse.
That's abuse.
What would be punishment is, here's that thing that you really enjoy doing. That's an activity, video game, whatever. Take it away. You can earn it back. Those kinds of things, fine. But when you are crossing a line on what should be a basic human right, you have gone way too far. Food, absolutely not. That child should be able to eat every single day.
But no, that's what I'm saying. Like you cannot take away objective, productive studying. You cannot. This is you're just setting up your child for failure there, because that's the biggest kind of thing. And I wanted to bring it up because in the end of the day, me thinking about parenting and like how would I position yourself, I would definitely, that would be my first point, is you have to study. One way or another, you want, if it's a homeschool and it happens to be a homeschool, fine, but it has to be productive. And
do you think that 12-year-old you would have listened to that?
No, but that's your role as a parent, to make sure that you can actually convince your child, not only just push them and force them to do, because especially with the difficult age such as 12-year-old, it's very difficult to actually make them doing something which they don't want, but convince them that that's in their best interest, and for them to at least put some work into it is already good. But no, that's definitely one of the things that I was just like, that's impossible. You just how are you getting, even like, how do people look at it and be like, yeah, that's okay? Like, I don't understand that. This is just
absolutely
that's
not.
math.
Absolutely
you can
not.
just look at
you
it.
can't take away. You can never punish a child by taking away their food. That is beyond a line. And I just want to point out how common, I don't know if you know, how common this family vlog kind of abuse has started to happen. So we now have the Franke incident. Not so long ago, there was the family of 5 incident, and the father, I believe, went to jail, and the channel was completely disbanded. Where they had 3 kids, and they would play horrendously mean pranks on their children for YouTube views, and you could see there was like evidence of abuse because the kids would be so afraid. For example, I remember this quite vividly. Daddy of 5, and if y'all remember, he had a prank where he put this invisible ink all over the carpet, and so the mom came up and was like, oh my god, how this invisible ink get everywhere? And the kid like started crying and having a panic attack because it's obvious in that moment that he would have been physically beaten for having done that, and so he was terrified, and they caught that on film, and people noticed the signs, and that was one. Then there was the Jordan Cheyenne incident where this mom, they found out a family member. She was a YouTuber. Again, another family like vlogger YouTuber, and there was a tragic thing. I think a family member got sick or something, and she had the camera up on the dashboard of a car, and she had her son sitting in the passenger seat, and her son was upset because someone that they cared about was sick. And she forgot to edit it out of the video, but she's going, look really sad. Can you cry more? Let the camera see your mouth as you cry. And like controlling him and how he cries in this moment on camera so that she could get a better YouTube video of it. And then before that, this is old school YouTube. You're not going to know about this. I watched the Shay Carl and the Shay Tards growing up. This is like original OG YouTube. He was one of the biggest family channels out there, and he filmed him and his kids, and everybody grew up watching these kids. And then he had an incident where he cheated on his wife, and all of these text messages got leaked online of him sexting with like a cam girl or something like that. And now these kids that go to school and their life is public and there are millions of people that follow them, now they're, being followed around by their dad's very public now affair, whereas kids in the past who aren't in social media would have been able to,
that's true,
keep that hidden. So there's so many now instances piling up of how horrendous family vlogging is. There was also a family vlogger who adopted a baby, but the baby had some kind of disorder, and I forget about the specifics of this incident, and they sent the baby back to be adopted by somebody else and gave the child back after they had it for like a year. So there's just incident.
That's very bad.
Oh, horrendous.
For a child's development and like attachment, and it's just that's very bad.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's horrible.
There's just so many now social media influencers that are these family vloggers that end up in these situations filming kids, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, how many stupid things did you do as a kid that you wouldn't want the entire world to know about, or to see the world watch you grow up? It's a weird situation to put children in the first place.
That's true.
And now it's one family vlogger after another where scandal incident, abuse keeps coming out about these. It's so common now, and I just don't at this point I don't know if I agree with family vlogging whatsoever at all, and I don't agree with putting these kids on camera.
It's a difficult question. I do think that to some degree what you're feeling, I think it's attributed to the fact that we live in such an era of very sensational news, and there are probably a lot of family bloggers which are actually okay type. Probably, I again, like I'm assuming, but it is a difficult question to how do you actually, because you, and that's one of the kind of topic, the conversation that we right now getting into is how much do you think your child is like what you want it to be. I know there are a lot of parents who are very possessive about their children. They're like, my child is not gonna do this, my child is not gonna do this. Like, hold on, like how do we as a society make sure that there is a stage where the children actually can just say, I want to do what I want to do outside of my parents' opinion? Like, you know, when I'm 16, 17 versus when I'm 13, 14, how do we like actually get that to, how can your child be 17 in America and you can disallow your child to have a vaccine, for example, just because and they're 17, like they are nearly of global age of actually being adults.
I agree with that sentiment, but where I'm coming from is if you think of the SA, laws, a child cannot consent to anything with an adult, correct? If that is true, I agree with the fact that a child can't consent to having their life and their face and their image and their body on camera for the world to see.
Again,
I don't. That's where I'm starting to just really. It's okay if you want to be a family vlogger and you have all adults in your family and it's just, the grown-up siblings and the grandparents and whatever, and you don't really put the kids on there. That's fine, but I'm at this point I'm thinking that it's not. I don't think it's. Any benefit is coming from having kids filmed. If anything, it's just putting more content out there for pedophiles to come across and use in a distressing sort of way.
There is, I think that there's a dangerous situation because the disorder such as that needs to be managed in a separate way rather than not putting children on the internet. I think that's a little bit slightly different. But outside of that, it's true. How do you identify? This is the parent wants to make money off their situation, or this is the child actually wants to film their life because they feel like that's their hobby and they feel fulfilled around it. And how do we as a society manage that child's safety in a sense as well? Because it's internet and it's just what it is. It's a difficult topic. And again, like when your child is 10 and it's fairly your child, how much are you actually allowed to dictate around their life? And how do we as a society make sure that
quite a bit. I think quite a bit. Because you as a parent are meant to be a parent. You need to control. They don't necessarily, their brain isn't developed. They don't understand what's safe for them. But
even if they think that it is.
Even if they think that it's developed and they know what they're talking about, at the end of the day, they don't. Parents tend to know better because there's reasons, like.
To be fair.
Yeah. And that's what we have the social services and CPS in place for, is for when parents aren't doing that. The problem is, how many times are, like the Franke incident, people are ignored when they're reaching out saying, hey, I think these kids are being abused.
That's true. Yeah, and again, is that due to the lack of law and regulation, or it's due to the lack of sponsoring the social services to actually be there? And again, the issue that brought up previously is following up with the families as well, initiating the changes and making sure that those are actually there, because it is definitely an issue. It's kind of a personal thing, but one of my exes was a social worker for a few years of her life, and she was actually she left because of that. She was like, there's no way I can mentally stay alive past that point, because there's not enough money and there's too many people to carry, and then you personally, your life is just in it, and it's going down faster than you think it would. It is, and it's a difficult thing to say, because in the end of the day, we would rather think that we are, as adults, are all ready to have children. And one of the things that I was thinking about, maybe we should instigate a license, for hell's sake. Like if you want to drive, you have a car, but you pass license. You want to be a parent,
or even
before you have to attend the classes.
I agree. Yeah, attending classes, and maybe classes would be an annual, mandatory 5-10 hours, whatever, of, hey, when every year you have to go and do your hours.
That's true.
Required, because things will change as your kids grow up. Things will change every year depending on what's going on.
That's true.
So I 100% would agree with that. I think far too many people have kids that shouldn't have kids. And it is a biological right. But maybe you could, social benefits could be contingent on you doing these, or being able to apply for insurance companies would be contingent on you doing these classes, something along those lines, because you can't fully just tell people they can't have kids. You can't put that out there.
Yeah, that's one of the things as well. How do we actually enforce it as well? You can't really stop. But in the end of the day, bloody 10%, if we can make 10% difference, this is 1 million people a year. 1 million people a year in US. We're not talking about any other country there. And there are free parenting classes. They do exist. They are getting sponsored by some governmental bodies, but they're not mandatory, and that's one of the things.
I think less on maybe parental classes, and I think most abuse stems from a combination of some kind of drug or alcohol abuse or low EQ. And I think that people having access to some form of free therapy, psychiatry, or just some kind of social building class that people can go to throughout their lifetime.
That's true.
Just to be able to manage their emotions better, understand why they react the way that they do to certain situations, so that when it comes to a child, your first instinct isn't out of anger or out of fear to go towards abuse. Maybe your first instinct would be
different, or I don't know, something. And that's the purpose of the classes, to teach you what your first instinct should be, and you train yourself over a time of practice to regulate it. But it's true, how many times, even when we work together, how many times you're that person has an anger issues. But that's casual.
That's where it stems from. That's where it stems from. I think society in general does not do a great job of teaching people how to manage their emotions and how to regulate their, heart rate and their adrenaline when they get
That's
upset and when they get angry, and how can I calm myself down, and in this situation maybe I should just walk away rather than saying something. Like, it doesn't give you, society just in general doesn't teach you these things. You're expected to kind of learn these on your own, and you as a parent are expected to teach your child, but if you as a parent can't do it yourself,
literally,
you can't teach your child how to do it.
And that's one of the things.
So I genuinely think that EQ programs in some way being enforced within society norms and rules, and just teaching people how to regulate these emotions better, rather than being so extremely upset and reacting like that, instantly abuse would drop.
And especially with the presence of children as well, because children do absorb so much of your behavior. And even if you think that they don't, and the figures that I looked at, it was 90% of domestic violence is witnessed by children at the household.
Yeah.
Which means that you don't get away with domestic violence in front of your child. You just don't. That's just what it is. Yeah. So even if you don't direct, even if there is a presence of domestic violence and your child is not a subject to it, they still, it's psychologically, they still observe it, they still think something about it. It may be thinking that it's probably not good, but how do you make sure that those children actually know that this is bloody bad?
Well, the problem
and they'll just learn that and be like, yeah, that's normal.
But they do think that's normal.
But that's the thing. Like, it's not okay, and that's why it's a very difficult subject. Especially conservatively speaking, it's a very difficult subject.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
But also think of how many domestic abuse takes place because of drug or alcohol abuse. Those people would not have drug or alcohol addictions and abuse if they could regulate their emotions better, because most of the time these come from trauma and wanting to run away and not understanding how to regulate. Yeah. So I think overall, some kind of EQ being out there and just teaching people
support structure, for people
would just help regulate that.
That's true, and we are in our stage of the society right now. We are in the best state there is. And as much as we, as a channel, we do like to kind of, to push the social media is this, social media is that. The social media here is really could be the biggest drive of this change, because we can all just we need to all make a big deal of this situation. We really do. We just need to make the biggest noise around it, so people hear and understand that this is hard. It's a big problem in our society, and we need to change it.
Yeah, no, it's
the action
massive.
Is needed.
When I found out how prevalent domestic violence in New Zealand was, because both of us live in New Zealand, neither one of us are from here, but we both moved here, and New Zealand is a significantly more progressive, socialist-leaning type country than both of us are from.
Yeah.
I never expected domestic violence to be as high.
That's true. Yeah.
As it was.
So it's really it's not this is the the right-leaning conservative people problem. No, it's really everyone. It's everybody. Yeah. And we are there. Like we arrived. Basically, we just need to do something about it. Because next generation are growing up and they are not having easier life than we did. In nowhere.
I don't know if social media is the answer though.
I think the social media is a good tool to use.
Look at all of these. Yeah, but look at this abuse stemmed from a social media.
That's true. Again, it's more of a making this situation popular, and you kind of briefly brushed by it. That what if they were just an average family without a following on YouTube?
It's true. How many times does that happen where they don't? It doesn't get that publicity.
And it just gets in 2 or 3 months it just gets back to wherever it was, because there is no money and no funding there. Yeah. What are you doing? Of course.
Oh, I didn't tell you about the update. I think it was today that the father of the kids, who has taken custody. Yeah. So the father separated from Ruby Franke.
Yes.
Like a year ago.
What's his name? Kevin?
Kevin Franke.
Son Kevin,
And he lived in a different house for the last year. He came to pick up the kids and take them away. And he showed up wearing his wedding ring.
Okay.
Which says a lot. If he's been separated from her for a year, he still has her back. He's still wearing a wedding ring. Even after this abuse has come out and he's coming to collect his kids. And, okay, he was separated from her for a year. He was there for a lot longer than a year. He knew about what she was doing.
Oh, for
He
sure.
didn't say anything.
No,
I don't know if it's any better for those kids to be with him.
That's true. No, but that's, again, like... but also why did they separate? So I didn't dig into his story. I just heard that he wasn't one to be in custody. I heard that he was not one of the people who were detained, as Judy and Ruby were. So I was like, oh, there may be something around it, or maybe he's detained and he's just not in the news or something. And I kind of dug around it, and I didn't find much of the information on it. But also, why did they split? And the chances are that they didn't split because of the violence issue. They probably split because of something else. Yeah. Which means that they are on one page around it, and that's not good.
Yeah, and the kids are with him.
Yeah, and now you're stuck with 6 years old child, not getting from a better situation.
It turns out her Ruby Franke's sisters, who are also with the kids, made a statement. They also have a family vlog channel.
Oh, shit.
So it's just like...
Okay, so it's like from one...
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't think there's any abuse allegations surrounding it. Yeah. But it's just a little devastating that from one family vlog situation where these kids are being raised around a camera and...
That's true.
I genuinely, I'm so torn, because I loved it. I used to love it. I thought it was amazing watching, the mom get pregnant and then have the baby. Then I'm watching the baby turn 3 and I'm